Welcome to the Ghost Story Grandma channel. Today, Grandma will bring you a mysterious and eerie tale. Get ready for it. Ghost Story, creepy true boardwalk horror stories. Ryan finished his shift at 2 a.m., walking along the deserted boardwalk. The sound of waves crashing couldn't drown out the creaking of the old wooden planks beneath his feet. Something felt off tonight. Sweat clung to his back despite the cold sea breeze. He quickened his pace as he passed the abandoned restaurant where Marcus worked as a security guard. The upper windows were pitch dark, but something made him stop. He looked up. A figure stood pressed against the glass, unmoving. The streetlight cast a dim glow, but he couldn't make out the face. Ryan blinked. The figure was gone. Marcus stood out front, eyes on his phone, taking a final drag of his cigarette before starting his shift. Ryan tapped his shoulder, asking about the restaurant. Marcus just shrugged, saying the entire building was locked tight. No one could get in. Ryan didn't believe him. His eyes hadn't deceived him. Lena had just finished her shift at the bar. She wheeled her bike out of the parking lot, fastening her helmet while checking her phone. A message from Ryan made her look up toward the restaurant. Nothing seemed out of place, but she knew Ryan wasn't the type to imagine things. The night before, Lena had heard a strange voice in the bar while cleaning up. It was faint, like someone whispering right behind her. But when she turned around, only her coworker was there. She had pretended not to hear it, but the cold shiver down her spine told her otherwise. Marcus started his usual rounds around the restaurant. Everything seemed untouched. The main door was locked, and all the windows were latched from the inside. He walked around back, shining his flashlight into the dark corners. There was a long scratch on the back door. Marcus crouched down for a closer look. It wasn't old. Ryan got a text from Lena. He decided to go back to the boardwalk. When he arrived, Lena was already there, staring up at the restaurant's second floor. Ryan asked if she saw anything. Lena said no, but she could feel someone watching. Marcus stepped out from behind them, his voice cold. If they really wanted to know what was going on, they should go inside and check. Ryan didn't think it was a good idea. Neither did Lena. But Marcus had a spare key from the management office. The front door creaked open. The air inside was icy. The smell of damp wood and old grease filled their noses. The three stepped in. Marcus flicked on his flashlight. The tables and chairs were still in place, but the floor had wet footprints. Ryan looked down. The footprints stretched from the door to the bar, then vanished. Lena's hands felt icy. She pulled out her phone and opened the camera. But when she looked at the screen, Ryan and Marcus weren't there. She was alone in the dark room. Lena lowered her phone, her heartbeat quickening. She stood in the cold, silent room, yet Ryan and Marcus had vanished from the screen. She turned to look at them. They were still there, their eyes filled with concern. Marcus asked what she had seen, but Lena didn't answer. Ryan stepped toward the bar, where the wet footprints had disappeared. There was no smudging or water spreading as expected. It was as if whoever left the footprints had simply vanished. He crouched down, touching the wooden floor. It was cold and dry. Suddenly, a noise echoed from upstairs. Marcus swept his flashlight toward the staircase, but the dim beam barely illuminated the upper floor. He exchanged a glance with Ryan before stepping forward. The steps creaked beneath his weight. Lena hesitated, unwilling to follow. The second floor was darker than they expected. There were no large windows, only faint streetlights casting weak glows into the corners. Ryan felt short of breath, as if something unseen was pressing down on the air. Marcus moved toward the last room at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open, scanning the room with his flashlight. It was empty, except for a small puddle of water on the floor. Lena remained downstairs. She glanced around, an uneasy feeling creeping up her spine. She walked to the bar, examining it more closely. A fine layer of dust covered the wooden surface, except for a set of wet handprints. The fingers were unnaturally long, leaving clear imprints on the dusty wood. Upstairs, Ryan looked out the window. From here, he could see the boardwalk clearly. The streetlights reflected off the water. He turned back, but at that moment, Marcus stumbled backward, breathing heavily, his eyes fixed on the corner of the room. Ryan followed his gaze with the flashlight. Against the wall sat an old wooden chair, its surface damp with water stains, as if someone had been sitting there just moments before they entered. Downstairs, Lena heard hurried footsteps descending the stairs. She backed away, her pulse racing. Ryan and Marcus rushed down, saying nothing. They exited the restaurant, shutting the door behind them. The three of them stood outside, looking up at the second floor. No one was there, yet the damp, musty smell still lingered in the air. Marcus pulled out the key, ready to lock the door, but just as he touched the keyhole, a sound came from inside. A faint, chilling laugh, drifting through the gap in the door. Marcus yanked at the door, but it wouldn't budge. Ryan stepped in to help, but it felt as if an invisible force was holding it shut. Lena backed away, her eyes locked on the narrow gap between the doors. Something had just moved in the darkness. A sudden noise came from inside, like something falling to the floor. Then, without warning, the door swung open, releasing a rush of icy air. Marcus instinctively stepped back as Ryan shone his flashlight into the room. Everything looked the same. No one was there, but the wooden chair in the corner had been dragged to the middle of the floor. Lena felt a deep chill as though unseen eyes were watching from the shadows. Ryan stepped inside first, Marcus following closely. Lena hesitated before entering. As soon as she stepped in, the door shut behind them on its own. Ryan turned quickly, but nothing seemed out of place. He scanned the room with his flashlight. The wet footprints from earlier were gone, but the atmosphere had grown heavier. Lena walked to the bar and looked down at the countertop. The wet handprints from before had vanished. But now, faint words had appeared in the dust, as if someone had just traced them with a finger. She reached out to touch them, but before she could read them clearly, a knocking sound echoed from the staircase. Marcus snapped his head toward the noise, his posture tense. Ryan stepped forward, looking up toward the second floor. The darkness was thick, unmoving. But then the knocking came again, slower, more deliberate. Lena took a step back, the feeling of unease creeping deeper into her bones. Marcus pointed his flashlight toward the stairs, but the beam flickered unsteadily. Then faint footsteps, soft, almost hesitant, echoed from above. Ryan moved forward, but just as he did, the sounds stopped. A heavy silence followed. Then, from somewhere in the shadows, a whisper emerged. Lena clenched her fists, feeling her chest tighten as if something unseen was pressing down on her lungs. No one spoke. They just stood, listening. A cold draft swept through the room, causing the curtain near the window to flutter. Ryan looked at Marcus, then motioned for them to leave. They slowly backed away, step by step. But just as Marcus turned around, a door on the second floor suddenly slammed shut. Lena gasped and stumbled backward, her foot knocking against something on the floor. She looked down. A key lay on the wooden planks, old, rusted, and damp. Ryan crouched and picked it up. The moment his fingers touched the metal, a wave of icy air rushed through the room, snuffing out the flashlight's beam. In the darkness, the whispering voice returned, clearer this time. Ryan gripped the key tightly, the icy sensation spreading through his hand. Lena pressed closer to Marcus, her eyes locked on the staircase. The silence was suffocating. Marcus took a step back, accidentally knocking over a chair. The crash echoed through the darkness. From the second floor, another sound responded. The door that had slammed shut moments ago now creaked open again. Ryan aimed his flashlight upward, but the flickering beam sputtered and died. Lena grabbed Marcus's arm, silently urging him to leave. But just as they turned away, a freezing gust brushed against the back of their necks. Ryan dropped the key. The whispering stopped instantly. A strange, heavy stillness settled over the room. No more noises from above, no more chilling air pressing in around them. Lena yanked Marcus toward the door, and Ryan followed close behind. This time, the door wasn't stuck. It swung open effortlessly. They bolted outside, none of them daring to look back. The night wind howled, rattling the rusted signs hanging in front of the bar. Marcus gasped for breath and turned to Ryan. Their eyes met, each of them shaken, wordless. Without another glance at the building, they walked away. Behind them, in the darkness, the bar door slowly creaked shut,